Hello everyone, I'm Nehemiah. Welcome back to the channel. Another day of learning and learning, and one of the steps to building the flight booking app. And like I spent 31 days, okay, learning FastAPI with you right here on YouTube. I was going to say Facebook. I guess Facebook is still in my mind, but actually we studied Fast API for 31 days. And after that, we started building our flight booking engine. And this is going to be a full end-to-end series where we talk about the front end, the back end, the DevOps, everything. And who knows, maybe even the mobile app. Okay. So in the previous video, I introduced Terraform. Okay. And I explained to you why I need Terraform. So if you missed that video, that is day 15, you need to go and watch it. It is very important. Hi, Abhishek. Thank you for joining today's stream. And like I was saying, it's very, very important, okay, that you watch it. Why? Because in day 15, I explain the problems we have with the current setup, what Terraform is, why Terraform, and how it's going to help us, okay? And before we even go deeper, okay, I don't want to rush into things. And like probably you might have read one of my posts on the internet, on X and LinkedIn. I've read this page a number of times, okay? More than 10 times. I've read this page, the install, the create, the manage, destroy. I've read all these pages, okay? So today what I'm going to do is also to make sure that you who are building along with me on the internet understand, okay? So we're going to go through this page. It's not very long, okay? Maximum it will take us maybe 30 minutes. That's what I assume, okay? And we are going to learn how to create infrastructure for this flight booking backend, okay? In the end, you're going to learn how, like, why Terraform is important and how full-scale popular applications use Terraform to manage infrastructure. And that's the same thing I want to do, okay? So step by step, as you go day by day, you'll understand how all the things fit together. Okay. So we are going to go through Terraform. After that, we shall now do a CI/CD, which will include Terraform, Docker Compose, GitHub Actions. Okay. So you remember we first of all began with learning FastAPI. After that, I built part of some many endpoints. Okay. If you remember, about maybe 10 or so endpoints, so far 10 to maybe 12 endpoints we have. After that, I introduced Docker. Okay. After that, I introduced Docker Compose. After that, I introduced AWS. Now we're talking about Terraform. After Terraform, we shall go into GitHub Actions. Then we shall wire them all together. Okay. Our backend running in Docker and being essentially using Docker Compose. After that, we shall go to now creating infrastructure using Terraform and not manually using the console on AWS. And after that, we are now going to use GitHub Actions to put all the things together. Okay. And yeah, as we go step by step, you'll get to understand what this is all about. Okay. Someone keeps calling me. Let me just send them a message. All right. So yeah, let's continue. I hope that makes sense. And some people are very eager to learn, especially Abhishek. I see Abhishek joined, uh, sent a message way early. So let's continue. Okay. So create infrastructure. Okay. So I'll zoom in so that you can see properly. And I hope my audio is okay on this other screen. Okay, that's okay. Abhishek is asking me when are you starting the AI series? Yeah, I plan to start the AI series. Actually, if you look at the channel pages, okay, the video section, I put one video on text generation using chat GPT. Okay. You can start by watching that. But if that's not good and you prefer a live stream, let me know. Okay. I would prefer to start that maybe after this, okay? Not to mix topics, but you let me know what you think, okay? And also balancing time with my day job. So what do you think? I was thinking we finish this, okay? Finish the DevOps, finish the backend, finish the front end, then we start the AI series. But once in a while, I'll drop a video on AI as a recorded video, okay? But if you want it live streamed, I can also do that, okay? So please let me know. So let's go through this, okay? So they're saying you can use Terraform to create and manage your infrastructure as code, okay? So when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about things like your machine, okay, which would be a Ubuntu machine on AWS EC2. It could be a Windows machine on Google Cloud platform. Oh my God, I'll bite my tongue. Or it could be anything, okay, any compute resource, or maybe it could be things like maybe security groups on AWS. It could be your bucket and so on and so forth. So they're saying in this tutorial, you will use Terraform to provision an EC2 instance on Amazon Web Services. Okay. Then they're saying EC2 instances are virtual machines running on AWS and a common component of many infrastructure projects. Okay. So instead of us manually going to the console, okay, going here to AWS and configuring things, okay, manually, because on AWS you can come here. Let me go to instances. Okay. So if you look at this, right now I have no instances, but if I click on launch instances, okay, you see we go through a manual process, okay, and we can do this, okay, but what if we want to do so many, okay, when we want to launch 100 instances, do we have to fill in this form again and again and again? That would be very painful, okay. So infrastructure as code is simply setting up our infrastructure. For example, an example of infrastructure is your EC2 instance. Okay. So instead of doing this manual process, okay, fill in this form, fill in the tag, put your Amazon machine image, choose the image type, maybe Ubuntu or Windows. Okay. Come down here and choose your instance type, choose the key pair, come down here, choose the network, configure the network settings, okay, configure storage, all these, and there's even more advanced details, okay. Imagine you have to create maybe 1,000 instances and you have to do it manually. You'd break down. Abhishek says, yes, I want to learn with you. All right, Abhishek, I've had you. We can do that, okay? Instead of the recorded videos, I can do live streams, okay, on AI, okay? And maybe weekends I'll plan, okay? I'll plan and then I'll announce it on the channel and on social media. All right. So here we are, okay, with Terraform, which is a beta use, okay. So they're saying to provision your infrastructure, you will write configuration to define your provider and instance. Set environment variables for your AWS conditions, initialize a local workspace, then apply your configuration to create your instance. Now, guys, I've told you, I've read these pages. Infrastructure as code, install, create, manage, destroy about 10 times or more than 10 times. So after this live stream, okay, in your free time, maybe after this live stream or tomorrow, make sure you also read this on your own and practice it, okay? Because I want this to be valuable to you. Watching alone is not enough, okay? You will not benefit from watching. You'll benefit by doing, okay? So let's go on. Let's say to follow this tutorial, you need to install Terraform CLI. So remember, I told you to install Terraform CLI. Okay, so if you click on this link and open, okay, says install Terraform. If I scroll, okay, you see they have instructions for installing on using Mac OS, using Homebrew on Mac OS, Chocolatey on Windows, Linux, okay, and I installed it. So if I go here and if I copy this command, okay, and I go to my terminal, probably in VS Code, minimize this, and I paste, okay, you see, it confirms that I have installed Terraform. So make sure you do that. And actually, if you're in Mac, it's very easy. Two commands. Just copy this command, paste, it runs, copy this other command, paste it in your terminal, it will run. Okay, very easy on Mac. That's why I like Homebrew. Okay, it makes things very, very easy. Now, after that, okay, after that, they say make sure you've installed AWS CLI. I also went on and installed it. So let this page open, and you're going to see how easy it is. Okay, so and then also you need an AWS account and associated credentials. I'm going to show you these credentials very soon. Okay, so like you see here, I have an AWS account. Right now, AWS is giving 6 months free with around $200 credit. Okay, so you create an AWS account. Okay, and then for installing the AWS CLI, they have instructions. Okay, put on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. So like me who's on Mac, I simply scrolled here and I came to command line installer. Okay, I copied these commands and I pasted them in my terminal. Copied these commands, pasted them. Copied this command, pasted them. Okay, and to verify, you run these two. Okay, for example, if I come here and I clear my screen, I can say which AWS. You see, tells me where the binary or where the executable of AWS is located. And then if I say AWS minus minus version and I hit enter, you see, I have the version of AWS. So Terraform, okay, AWS CLI, and an AWS account. Okay. The fourth one I think is the credentials, which I'm going to show you shortly. So yeah, let's go ahead and you're going to see how simple this is. Okay. And why I'm doing this is also to encourage you to learn by reading, guys. Okay. Let me tell you the difference between great software engineers, okay, and people who are stuck in the beginner stage for long is reading. Trust me on that, okay? And I want you guys to learn from me, okay, that reading is important. So if you're not used to reading, you need to start getting used to it. Sometimes you have to force yourself to read, okay? You have to force yourself until it becomes a habit, okay? If you don't, it won't, okay? So let's continue. I'll close this and then continue. Okay. I'll say the tutorials in this, they're saying the tutorials in this collection use resources that qualify under the AWS free tier. Okay. And they're saying we are not responsible for any charges that you may incur. Remember to complete the destroy infrastructure tutorial later in this collection to remove the infrastructure you create while following these tutorials. And I'll show you how. Okay. And like I told you, create a free tier AWS account. A free tier AWS account is a new account, is an account given to someone who is creating an account on AWS for free, for the first time. Okay. And you're given 6 months of credit, okay, to use, to play around with resources. Okay. So let's continue. They're saying now write configuration. Create a new directory for the Terraform configuration you will use in this tutorial. Okay. Then they're saying make a directory, learn Terraform, get started AWS. But I'm not going to do this. Why? Because we have our directory here. Okay. We have our directory here. I won't do that. Okay. I won't do that. Then after that, they're saying change it to the directory. I don't need to do that because we're already in it. Okay. Here in the terminal, like you see in my VS Code, we're already into the terminal. Maybe I can reduce this to make the terminal longer. After that, it says, now they're explaining to us, they're saying Terraform configuration files are plain text files in HashiCorp's configuration language, HCL. So the H is HashiCorp, C is configuration, L is language. So HCL is HashiCorp configuration language with names ending with TF. Okay, just like a Python file. If you look at our Python programs here, our Python modules, for example, if I go to CRUD, you see all of them are ending with .py. So just like a Python module ends with a .py, for Terraform, they end with a .tf. Okay, very simple to understand. Okay, so we continue. They're saying when you perform operations with the Terraform CLI, Terraform loads all of the configuration files in the current working directory and automatically resolves dependencies with your configuration. Okay. So when you shall perform operations like initializing Terraform, applying our configuration, okay, it works with everything in the current working directory, okay, and it resolves any dependency for us. So it says this allows you to organize your configuration into multiple files and in any order you choose. So it doesn't matter. So they're saying Terraform configuration is organized into a few steps of blocks that let you configure Terraform itself, Terraform providers, the resources, the data sources that make up your infrastructure. So let me explain this for you, okay? In Terraform, okay, I want to make this bigger so that people can see. In Terraform, okay, there are the number of things, okay? You have Terraform itself, okay? Then you have what they call Terraform providers. For example, if you wanted to configure infrastructure on GCP, okay, you need a Terraform provider for GCP. And GCP is Google Cloud Platform. If you want to configure infrastructure on AWS, you need a Terraform provider for AWS. So you understand? We have Terraform itself, okay? And then in Terraform, you can configure Terraform itself, or you can also configure providers. A provider is simply a plugin which gives you access, okay, control over things like AWS, GCP, Azure. Okay, so to use AWS, you need a Terraform provider for AWS, and we're going to see that. So they're saying, and the resources and the data sources that make up your infrastructure. Okay, one of the resources could be, for example, a compute resource, a machine, for example, like a Ubuntu machine and maybe a Windows machine. Okay, that could be a resource or anything. Okay, else. So let's continue. They're saying the Terraform block. They're saying the Terraform block configures Terraform itself. Okay, so what are they talking about? Are you seeing this code here? Okay, to do that, I need to create a file. Okay, let's continue reading so let me not get ahead of the tutorial. Okay, they're saying the Terraform block, which is the word Terraform. So Terraform is a keyword. Okay, Terraform is a keyword. Then two curly brackets. Okay, so they're saying this when you say Terraform, open curly bracket, close curly bracket. Okay, it creates what they call a block. Okay, and this block is called a Terraform block. So they're saying this Terraform block configures Terraform itself, including which providers to install. Okay, I've already told you what a provider is. Okay, a provider is a plugin which enables you to interact with a cloud provider. For example, AWS, GCP, Azure. Okay, and they're saying including which providers to install. They're saying which version of Terraform to use to provision the infrastructure using a let me select this. So they're saying using a consistent file structure makes maintaining your Terraform projects easier. So we recommend configuring your Terraform block in a dedicated terraform.tf file. Okay. So they're saying naming it like this is good. Why? Because it will make our project consistent. Okay. So if anybody comes in our project and sees the terraform.tf file, okay, they will know that this is a file for configuring Terraform. So they're saying create and open a file named terraform.tf with the following configuration to define your Terraform block. So I'll copy this, okay, and then I'll go to VS Code. Okay, so this is our project. Okay, and I'm going to do it outside, backend, frontend, mobile, shared. Okay, so this is to give you a wider picture of what I'm trying to do. I'm creating the backend, like you've seen, creating the front end. Now I'll create the mobile app at some point, and this follow will be for shared things between the backend, frontend, and mobile. Okay, so Abhishek, actually, when we shall be building the backend, you're going to see me doing AI integrations. Okay, so let me create a file. Okay, so this is a terraform.tf. Okay, and they're saying to configure Terraform, you need to create what they call a Terraform block. How do you create a Terraform block? You type Terraform, then two quotes like that. Okay, two curly braces. Okay, then hit enter. And what things can I configure in Terraform? For example, the version. Okay, and also what can I configure is the provider. For example, if I want to work with AWS, I have to tell Terraform about the providers. Okay, to tell Terraform about the providers, there's another block you have to add here. So blocks in Terraform, you create a block by specifying a name of a block and curly braces. Okay, So like this one is called Terraform and CLI braces. So to specify the provider, a plugin for a cloud platform I want to use, you have to call it required underscore providers. So you create a required providers block, okay, and put those same curly braces. Where am I getting this from? It is not just coming from my mind right now, but it's because, like I told you, I read the documentation more than 10 times. Okay. I read it more than 10 times. So after this, make sure you also read the documentation and do everything we are doing here on your own. That's how you learn. Yes, Guren, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining today's live stream. I hope you're okay and doing amazing and great on your end. So let's go ahead. Let me just look at the chat. I want to make sure I've not missed out anything. All right, good. So now let's continue. Like you see, everything I'm telling you is right here. Okay, I've not cooked it from my head, but because I've done it many times, okay, it's easy now for me to know what I'm doing. Okay, so I encourage you to also do the same thing. That's why you say I came here to the code and I just began typing and explaining to you what they are. Why? I've done it many times. Okay. So every time you go on the internet and see people speaking things very easily, it's because they have done it for a long time. So also for you to also be good, you have to practice, practice, practice. So I encourage you guys, don't stop at only watching this. Okay. After this stream, make sure you do this, okay, on your own. That's when the real learning will happen. So I'll copy, okay, and I'll paste it here, okay. So I want to reduce the size of this terminal. I'll paste it there. So let's continue, okay. So they'll say, now they're saying Terraform. Let me continue. They're saying Terraform uses binary plugins code providers to manage your resources by calling your cloud provider's API. Okay, this is what I've told you. Okay, that in the Terraform block, how do you create a block? You give it a name and then you give it these curly braces. So, like for example, here we have a block called Terraform. Okay, and in this block Terraform, we can configure Terraform itself. Like for example, here we have configured the version of Terraform, and we have a block here for required providers. And one of the providers we are seeing is called AWS. Okay, so AWS is the provider we are using today. So let's continue. So they're saying Terraform providers are distributed and versioned separately from Terraform. Okay, so if you go back to this file, you see that this version here is for this block here of Terraform. Then this version inside here is for the AWS provider. So these are two separate things. Okay, so Terraform is versioned differently. The provider in our case, which is AWS, is also being versioned differently. Okay, I hope that has sunk in your mind. Let's go. So they're saying by decoupling providers from the Terraform binary, Terraform can support any infrastructure vendor with an API. Okay, yeah, that's a very good advantage. And they're saying the required providers block lets you set version constraints on the providers. The required providers block lets you set version constraints on the providers your configuration uses. Okay, so like they're just repeating what I've just told you. Okay, so if I can close this, okay, we have Terraform. So the Terraform block, which starts from line 1 to line 10, okay, is used for two things: configuring your setting your providers, but also mentioning your required version of Terraform. So this is the required version of Terraform, and this is the required version for your provider. And in this case, we only have one required provider, which is AWS. So Terraform is managed separately from AWS. So it creates a scenario whereby there's no conflict. Okay, these two can't conflict, which is a very good thing. That's what they're saying. So they're saying HashiCorp maintains the Terraform registry from which you can source public Terraform providers and modules. So if I actually click on this, oh, let me open it in a new tab. Okay, open link in new tab so that you see. I want you to see that the registry. Okay, so if I come in, I type, for example, AWS. Okay, so in this registry, you can find any provider you want. You see, if I click here, you see this is the one we're using, AWS by HashiCorp. Okay, and if you go back to our provider code here, you will see that the source is HashiCorp AWS. Now you understand when it says HashiCorp AWS. Okay, HashiCorp actually is the company which creates Terraform. Okay, so the source of our provider is from HashiCorp. The plugin we're using is from HashiCorp. Okay, so we're using AWS from HashiCorp. That's what this one means. Okay, so let me know in the chat. Do you now understand what Terraform is? Do you know what required providers is? Do you know what AWS is? What source is? What version? What this version is and why it's different from this other one? Okay, if you don't, please let me know and I'll re-explain. So they're saying set source and version arguments for each provider in the required providers block. And they're simply explaining this, the source and what else did they say? And version. Abhishek says they understand, and that's good. So they're talking about source and version, which I've just told you that the source of our provider in this case is AWS from HashiCorp, and the version is this one here, 5.92. Then we go again. They're saying the source argument specifies a host name, which is optional, a namespace, and provider name. In the example configuration, the AWS provider source is HashiCorp AWS. Okay, like I've told you, it is AWS HashiCorp, and I've also confirmed it from the registry. So this registry is like, imagine it's like a GitHub, okay, but it's like a GitHub of AWS of providers for Terraform. Okay, so this is the official HashiCorp AWS provider. Okay, it's just a plugin. Okay, so what is a provider? A provider is a plugin. It's a plugin, something, a tool which is enabling us to interact with AWS, or rather, a tool which is helping Terraform interact with AWS. So Terraform uses the AWS provider to interact with AWS for us. Okay, now we continue. They say the version argument sets a version constraint for your AWS provider, okay, which is this one here, okay. In our case, like I've mentioned again and again, and they're saying if you do not specify a version constraint, Terraform defaults to the most recent version of the provider. So if you don't give this, imagine we removed this, okay, Terraform will download the most recent one, okay. Terraform gives you the most recent one. So we have to specify. Okay, let's continue. They're saying we recommend using version constraints to ensure that Terraform does not install a version of the provider that you have not tested with your configuration. Okay, good. That's a good thing. They're saying the string, okay, this tilde greater than sign 5.92, this one here, says it means your configuration supports any version of the provider with a major version of 5 and a minor version greater than or equals to 9.2. Okay, so the 5 is the major version. It says support AWS with AWS provider version 5. So 5 is the major version and 9.2 is the minor version. So give us any major version of 5 and a minor version greater or equals to 9.2. As simple as that. So they're saying the example configuration also defines the required version of Terraform itself. The string greater than or equals to 1.2 means your configuration supports any version of Terraform greater than or equals to 1.2. So you're saying when you installed Terraform, you probably installed the latest version available. And that's what I did, okay? And they're saying you can check your current version by running Terraform minus version command, okay? So you can go here to our terminal and say Terraform. Of course, I did this earlier, but it won't hurt to do it again. So you see, this is my Terraform version, which I have installed, okay? Very clear, very simple. And this block actually was simply explaining this, okay? The required version for this setup. Remember, what I installed is this, okay? But for our setup, it's this. So it's going to detect that change. Excuse me. All right, friends, let's now continue. Okay. So I hope that now makes sense to you. Okay. I hope that makes sense to you. Let's now continue. Okay, they are now saying use your text editor to paste the configuration below in a new file named main.tf. Okay, so right now you should know that any file ending with a .tf is a file holding Terraform configuration. Okay, and a file ending with the .tf is a file holding Terraform configuration. So, but terraform.tf, remember, is for defining your Terraform configuration, okay, like its version and the required provider like AWS, okay. If you need another provider like GCP, you have to specify it, okay. But in this case, we need only AWS. So terraform.tf is for specifying, is for configuring Terraform itself and providers. Have that in your mind. So let's create it right now. Come here, paste. So here we are, main.tf and terraform.tf. We continue. Okay, so they're saying we paste this configuration. So I'll copy. Okay, so you see, learning from documentation is not that hard. And like I told you at the beginning, okay, one of the differences between a quality software engineer and someone who is going to be stuck in the beginner phase forever is not reading. Okay, if you're not used to reading, guys, I beg you, force yourself. Okay, use what they call the 2-minute rule. Try to read for only 2 minutes. Okay, when nothing is disturbing you, your phone is off, there's nothing disturbing, no person is shouting in your ears. No, try to read for 2 minutes. This is what they call the 2-minute rule. Try to read for 2 minutes. As you do it over and over again, you'll find that you're getting used to it, okay? And it will become a very, very great habit, okay? So trust me, once you get used to reading, okay, that means reading documentation, everything, you'll see yourself going very far in your career. So you'll learn quick and much, okay? So watching a video is good. I'm not saying videos are bad. Videos are good, okay? But in addition to that, you need, okay? All right, let's continue. They're saying when you write a new Terraform configuration, okay, let me read this again. When you write a new Terraform configuration, we recommend defining your provider blocks and other primary infrastructure in a main.tf as best practice. Okay, so why they're calling it a main.tf is for best practice, guys. Okay, that's the reason. It's a best practice. So let's continue. Now they're saying as you add your configuration, you may choose to organize related infrastructure into different files. Okay, so they're saying review the blocks in your main.tf file. Okay, so let's continue. Now they're saying provider. I want to explain providers. What are providers? If you go to our main.tf, you see we have what they call provider. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, let's continue and understand this. Okay, but by now, from what I explained in the Terraform.tf, you must already understand it very quickly. Okay, what it is meaning. But you can actually know that provider is simply pointing to the provider you have here. Okay, because remember, in these required providers, you can specify more than one provider. It can be AWS. You could have maybe another one, probably GCP. Okay, like that. Okay, but so which means here, when you in your main.tf, you need to specify the provider. Is it AWS? Is it GCP? Okay. So in our case, we only have one. Okay. So I'll remove this other one. Okay. We have AWS. I hope that makes sense. But don't believe me. Let's go into the documentation. Okay. To see what's going on. So they're saying the provider block configures options that supply to all resources managed by your provider, such as the region to create them in. Okay, so if we go here, we see we have a region, okay, which is US West 2. Now, what is a region? Okay, a region is simply a place in the world where the AWS data centers, okay, where the actual physical servers are installed. If I go to AWS here, okay, and I click this, okay, let me click this icon. I think this icon which says United States Ohio, and I click. Let's wait for it to load. You're going to see, you see the number of regions. Okay, so for the Terraform in the Terraform configuration, they're using Oregon. Oregon is US West 2, but mine is US East 2. Okay, so these are regions where AWS physical servers are located. Okay, so let's say, for example, like if you're maybe in a particular location, okay, and you want to reduce things like maybe like access time, latency, you configure your setup to be closer to where your application is closer. Okay, so like for example, like if I am in maybe Africa, okay, maybe I may choose a center maybe in South Africa. Okay, if I'm in maybe in Asia Pacific, I may choose something in in Mumbai, okay? If I am closer to Canada, I'll choose CS Central, okay? If I'm in Europe, maybe I will choose London, okay? EU West 2. Or if I'm probably in Paris, I could choose this, EU West 3. If I'm in South America, I would choose this. So the idea is you choose the region closest to either you or your clients or your application, okay? Depends on your business use case and what you're trying to achieve, okay? But the whole idea is choose the region closest to your business needs, okay? So, where are we? Here in the Terraform, you see that they see the provider we want is AWS, okay? And this provider comes from the terraform.tf, from these required providers. So you cannot specify a provider here who is not in the terraform.tf. Take note of that, friends, okay? So the region is US West 2, okay? But I'm going to change mine, okay? Because I want it to be, if I can, just to show you this, US East 2. So I'm going to change here to US East 2, okay? So that you say it works, okay? To avoid cram work. So don't cram, but it has to be US West 2 or US East 2, okay? And in your free time, go and try out with another region, okay? So let's continue. I'll go on to back here, okay? And say this provider block configures the AWS provider, okay? Like I've just been telling you. And it's saying the label of the provider block corresponds to the name of the provider in the required providers list in your Terraform block, okay? What they are saying, this provider here corresponds to the value here. As simple as that, okay? Don't try to specify something which is not there. The label of the provider block corresponds to the name of the provider in the required providers list in your Terraform block. That this label here, okay, corresponds to this one in required providers. As simple as that. Okay. Then we continue. So this is what they're trying to explain. Okay. So they're saying if you would rather provision your resources in a different if you would rather provision your resources in a different AWS region, update the value of the region argument to your preferred region. And that's what I've just done. Okay. Theirs, remember, theirs is US West, mine is US East. All right, friends, let's continue. And they're saying you can use multiple provider blocks in your Terraform configuration to configure multiple providers or multiple instances of the same provider with different configurations, such as a different region. That is correct, okay? So you can see that with simply code like this, infrastructure as code, we can easily configure multiple instances or multiple providers, okay? For example, a provider for AWS, provider for GCP, for Azure, or anything, okay? Or maybe locally here on my if I have a server here, I can do that, okay? Using Terraform. Then they're saying Terraform providers must authenticate with your cloud provider's API to provide your resources, okay? Providers often support multiple authentication methods. Then they are saying, and you're going to see one of them in a minute. They're saying Terraform's AWS provider uses the same authentication methods as the AWS CLI. Okay, CLI for command line interface. Okay, so this is like a command line interface, like this terminal here. And remember, I installed AWS CLI. Okay, like I showed you at the beginning. Okay, all right, let's go on. So of course I have an error here because of the wrong command I ran. I think it's supposed to be with 2 dashes to show you the version. Okay, that's now correct. Let's continue. Now they're saying to use your IAM credentials to authenticate the Terraform AWS provider, set the AWS access key ID and AWS access key ID and AWS secret access key environment variables. So you'll copy it, for example, like this. Go to your terminal. Okay, let me expand this so that you see it clearly. Okay, say clear and paste. Okay, then after that, you put in your key. Okay, these are secrets. Don't share them. Okay, don't share them. So I'll cancel that because I've already set mine. Okay. Then you do the same for the access key. How do you get these keys? Okay. If you don't know what IAM is, let me give you an easy way. Okay. So go to your on your AWS account, click on your profile name, okay, your account project name, and go to security credentials. Okay. So when security credentials loads, you'll scroll to this section which says access key. Okay, like you see mine, I have one. Then you create. Okay, create this and use it for your testing purposes. But after that, delete it. Okay. What you're supposed to do is what they call the IAM user. Okay. But of course, with this, you'll get your secret key and access key. Okay. But I won't create. It will give you, and after that, you replace the values. Okay. Access key ID equals to what you've copied from AWS, you paste. Export AWS secret key, you copy and paste. Okay. And I did that. So these are secrets. Don't share them, please. Okay. Don't share. So they're saying if you don't have access to IAM user credentials, use another authentication method described in the AWS provided documentation. You can, okay, do this, but I have already set mine. Okay. So they're saying use the AWS CLI to verify your credentials. Okay. So if you have installed your credentials, you can do this. Okay. I can copy this command, or you simply go to my terminal and type it. Okay. And I say AWS space configure space then list, hit enter. Okay. So you see mine, it has proved there's a access key and there's a secret key. Okay. So make sure you also do this. All right. We are almost there. We're almost there, guys. Okay. Step by step. So we're done with authentication. Now, next step is data sources. So I think you see now how easy this is. Okay. Certain things look big and massive, but once you break it down slowly, you find it very easy. Okay. Very easy. And after we have gone through this and we are done with Terraform, you'll find that actually it's going to make sense when I now apply it to the flight booking engine and why I need it. Okay. And why we need it. So let's continue. So they're saying you can use the data blocks to query your provider for information about other resources. Okay. This is a data block. Okay. So like, for example, if I reduce this so that you can see properly, okay, talk about the provider block, we now have a data block. Okay. So to create a data block, you start with the keyword data, as simple as that. Okay. Then we continue. Remember, every block has these parentheses. Okay. These parentheses. So let's continue. Now they're saying this data source fetches data about the latest AWS let me read this again. Sorry. This data source fetches data about the latest AWS AMI that matches the filter. So you don't have to hard code the AMI ID into your configuration. So what is AMI? AMI is abbreviation for Amazon Machine Image. Okay. That's the virtual machine which AWS gives you, okay? Which could be a virtual machine running, for example, maybe a Ubuntu machine, a Windows machine, a Linux machine. I'll show you that briefly again, okay? For those of you who might have just joined. If I go to EC2, okay, I'm going to show you the Amazon machines. If I go to instances, okay, then I'm waiting for I want a bit to say launch. Okay, let's go to launch instances. Okay, if we go to launch instances, okay, are you seeing this? They're saying application and OS images, Amazon machine image. So A is for Amazon, M machine, I for image. Okay, and we have them here. There's Amazon Linux, Mac OS, Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, and others. Okay, so what we are doing here is simply giving us. So using Terraform, okay, we don't have to fill in that whole form, okay. Did you see that this whole form, guys? All this, imagine you have to create 1,000 instances for your project. You have to fill in this form 1,000 times. Isn't that a pain? Wouldn't you just collapse and give up on your job? Okay. So so this data source in our case, okay, they're saying this data source fetches data about the latest AWS AMI, which you now know that matches the filter, so you do not have to hard code the AMI ID into your configuration. And they're saying data sources help keep your configuration dynamic and avoid hard coded values that can become stale. Like, it's not a good practice to have hard coded data. Okay, so in this case, you see, let us continue. Okay, so you're saying data sources have an ID which you can use to reference the data attributes within your configuration. Okay, all data sources have an ID. Okay, because you have to, like we know in programming, IDs are used to identify things uniquely. Okay, so it makes sense for a data source to have what, an ID to, because that's the best way to identify something uniquely. Then they're saying data sources are prefixed with data. Okay, followed by the block's type and name. Okay, so in this example, data AWS underscore AMI dot Ubuntu. Okay, so data is the prefix. Okay, the block's type. So this one is what? The block type is AWS AMI. And I've explained what AMI is. Amazon Machine Image. It should be a Ubuntu machine, Windows machine, Linux machine, anything. Okay. And they're saying in this example, the data.aws AMI.ubuntu data source loads an AMI for the most recent Ubuntu number. Says loads an AMI for the most recent Ubuntu number NABAT release in the region configured for your provider. These guys want to break my tongue. Ubuntu number NABAT, okay? Simply a machine, okay? Too much English. It's simply a machine, okay? Machine. So, okay? So this is it. This define that what? That ID, okay? And remember, look at this, guys. They are saying it loads an AMI for the most recent. How do you know most recent? It's the most recent because of this word, okay? Even here you see it. We say most recent equals to true. So it will get the most recent Ubuntu machine. So and then they're saying they have this word which is saying Ubuntu Nobo Nubat. Okay, it took me time to understand how did they arrive to this. If you go to this, okay, under this block, so they have a block called filter. Okay, and remember what they're telling you that this data block, okay, helps you to fetch, to query, okay, to query. So what they are saying in this filter here, they're saying we want the name, okay, of this Ubuntu image, okay. So if you look at this string here, okay, it is Ubuntu, okay, images, HVM, SSD, GP3, Ubuntu, Nobo, okay. That's why here they are saying Ubuntu, Nobo, Nubat release, okay. So this is where they get the name Nobo is Ubuntu, Nobo, okay. So this is the exact specification of that machine which they want, okay. And what they want is its what? Name, okay, or ID, ideally, okay. So after that, we continue. I hope that makes sense to you, okay. So now here when they say you can use data blocks to query your cloud provider for information, okay. So this is how you use a data block to query for information, okay. So in this case, they're simply loading the most recent Ubuntu machine in the US East region. Where's US East? Right here. Okay. I mean, where is it? 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 Up here. Okay. This is the region. How is it going, guys? Do you now understand? Is it becoming more clear? Any question so far? Me, actually, I think this is getting easy. Trust me, like easy, like extremely easy. Okay. When it's broken down in small bits, it becomes very, very easy. Okay. Very easy. Now let's continue and talk about. So we're talking about a number of things. Okay. Authentication, data sources. Now let's go to resources. We're almost done actually. They're saying resources. They're saying a resource block defines components of your infrastructure. Okay. The example configuration defines a resource block to create an AWS EC2 instance. Okay. So like if I come here, okay. So we have our provider, which we have understood. We know our data source. Our data source is to make a query, okay, for particular information. Okay. And now we have a resource block. In this case, the resource we want is an AWS instance. Okay. So these keywords, provider, data, resource, are keywords. Okay. So if you want to create any resource block, what do you need to do? You simply say resource, okay, and brackets like that. If you needed a data block, what do? You say data and those kind of brackets. If you need a provider block, you say provider, curly brackets, like that. This is the first step. Okay. And then after that, you can now give the names. Okay. Here, put now the names. Okay. And now that you've understood this, now you can use AI to generate for you this very fast. Otherwise, if you tell AI to generate it for you before understanding it, you'll get confused and you'll curse AI. Okay. Why? Because AI has been trained on both correct information and wrong information. Now, to be able to tell the difference between wrong information and correct information, you need to know the correct information, okay, which is from the documentation, okay. So you understand the correct information. When you understand the correct information, when AI gives you results, you're able to review its results and decide that this is correct and this is wrong, or this is what I want and this is not what I don't want. That's one thing I see people forgetting and missing out a lot. A very huge mistake. So I'll leave this, okay? Oh, it edited something. I'll leave that as US EC2. Let's continue, okay? So they're saying this example configuration defines a resource block to create an AWS EC2 instance, okay? Let's continue. They're saying, I'm interested in this part. They're saying provider developers determine supported resource types and their arguments. The first line of a resource block declares a resource type and a resource name. So the resource type is we want an AWS. This is the first one. Okay. So this first one is an AWS instance, and the next one is the type. So we want an AWS instance, which is an app server. Take note of that. Okay, an application server, which means it can have things like application code, and it can work as an app server. So we continue. So they're saying in this example, the resource type is AWS instance. Okay, like I've told you, and they're saying the prefix of the resource type corresponds to the name of the provider, and the rest of the string is the provider defined resource type. Okay, so the prefix of the resource. So for example, like if our provider, okay, here was GCP. Let me just explain to you, was like GCP. Okay, so here, okay, would say GCP instance. Okay, that's how simple it is. All right, so let's continue. They're saying together the resource type and the resource name form a unique address for the resource in your configuration. So the resource type, okay, and this one form a unique address. Okay, so resource type, resource name, they form a unique address. Then they're saying you can refer to a resource in other parts of your configuration by its resource address. Okay, so these two, okay, form they combine them to create what they call a unique ID, a unique address. Okay, so it's saying the arguments in your resource block configure the resource and its behavior. Okay, they're saying the AMI argument specifies which machine to use by referencing your data.aws ubuntu's data sources ID. So let me explain to you this. Okay, the Amazon machine image. Okay, so this data, okay, .aws underscore ami .ubuntu.id is referring to this. That is why it was queried. Okay, so here in the data block, you first query, okay, and you get you find out which Ubuntu give me the most recent Ubuntu Noble. Okay, so this data block simply says, give me the most recent Ubuntu Noble. After getting that most recent Ubuntu Noble, how do you refer to it? By saying data.awsami.ubuntu. That's its unique name. Okay, and here we're picking its ID. So you're saying for the AWS app server, which I want, the actual Amazon machine image, what it's called is called this. Okay, but this is a variable, by the way. This is a variable. Okay, like I've showed you on AWS, you have to choose. Okay, so this makes it automatic and easy for us. Okay, then they're saying next is the instance type. They're saying the instance type argument hard codes t2.micro as the type, which qualifies for AWS free tier. Okay, so the instance type here, t3.micro, is a free type. Let me go to AWS and I show you something. Okay, if I go back to here, instances, okay, and I go to where I think instance type, okay, then it's saying free tier eligible. There's t3.micro and there are others. Okay, if for example I choose, okay, I can say maybe I see, for example, I think this one is called t2.nano. Let me expand so that you see properly. This one here, t2.nano, okay, it's not free actually. Okay, you see others have, you see t3.nano is also not free. T3.micro is free. T3.small, okay, There are many. So even here we can say t3.micro. Micro, let me type t2, okay? t2.micro. Okay, are you seeing it? But looks like it's not free tier anymore. Okay. So let me look for t3. Okay. So we have t3.micro. Are you seeing? So probably we can actually also use it. Okay. Let me say change to t3.micro so that we don't cram. Okay. They can actually be changed. So that's the instance type. So let's go back. Looks like I zoomed in a lot. Where is this? All right, then they're saying tags. The tags argument sets the EC2's instance name. You can also set other tags for your EC2 instance in the tags argument. Okay, so here they simply have tags. Okay, and the tags they're saying learn Terraform. Okay, I'm going to change the tag. Okay, I'll call it my company name. Call it arrow bound. Okay, arrow bound. So that when I'm on AWS, I know that this is for my company, Airbound Ventures. As simple as that. Okay. Where are we? Yeah, we're here. So now, yeah, we're now getting close. By the way, we're now almost at the bottom. The main. Let me tell you, I've read this thing about 10 times. Now we are actually done with the hard stuff to understand, which is actually easy. So if the hard thing to understand is easy, it means we are successful with this. So let's say format configuration. They're saying we recommend using consistent formatting to ensure readability. Well, English is going to break my tongue. We recommend using consistent formatting to ensure readability. They're saying the Terraform FMT command automatically reformats all configuration files in the current directory according to HashiCorp's recommended style. So they're saying in your terminal, use Terraform to format your configuration files. So I'll copy it. Okay. Go to the terminal. Okay. Clear. Maybe type, because sometimes I like typing things to learn them from scratch. So Terraform FMT. Okay. And you see they've formatted for us the main.tf automatically. Okay. Then if I continue, they say Terraform prints the names of the files it modified, if any. In this case, the example configuration provided does not exactly match the recommended style. So Terraform updated your main.tf file. As simple as that. Okay. All right. Now we continue. Now they're saying initialize your workspace. Before you can apply your Terraform configuration, you must initialize your Terraform workspace with the terraform init command. As part of initialization, Terraform downloads and installs the providers defined in your configuration in your current working directory. As part of initialization, Terraform downloads, okay, and installs the providers defined in your configuration in your current working directory. Okay. So they're saying initialize your Terraform workspace. So we shall use this command called terraform init. So I'll come here and I say terraform init like that. So you see it says initializing backend, initializing provider plugins. Okay. You see it says finding HashiCorp AWS versions matching this. Okay. Where is that? This one. Okay. So it's the provider plugin for AWS it is looking for. And look at this thing now. Installing HashiCorp AWS version 5.100. Isn't this interesting and very easy? Okay. There we are. Okay. So if you're enjoying this, share this video, okay, in your external, in your, what can I call it, in your with your network, okay. Trust me, learning is nice if you're a team, okay. When I come here on the internet and I learn with you guys, Abhishek, Guren, okay, Linus, Jericho, and so many of you, okay, whom I may not know by name, okay, it becomes fun, okay. So they're saying installing, okay, you see it's now installing. Okay, let's go on to documentation. Okay, now they're saying when the command is successful, they're saying Terraform downloaded the AWS provider and installed it in a hidden .terraform subdirectory of your current working directory. We are going to look for this hidden file. Okay, since we are developers, we know Linux commands. Okay, so we shall look for it. And they're saying Terraform also created a file named terraform.log.hcl, which specifies the exact provider versions used with your workspace, ensuring consistency between runs. So if you asked what happens when you do init, what's the purpose of init? Say init simply initializes my project, okay? And Terraform uses it to download the providers and installs it in a hidden .terraform files, okay? And Terraform also creates a file called terraform.log.hcl, which provides the exact provider versions, okay? So we're going to do that, okay? Guys, look at this. We have success. It says Terraform has been successfully initialized. You may now begin working with Terraform. Try running Terraform plan to see any changes that are required for your infrastructure. All Terraform commands should now work. If you ever set or change modules or backend configuration for Terraform, rerun this command to reinitialize your working directory. If you forget, other commands will detect it and remind you if you do so necessary. So look at it. Very easy, okay? Very easy. As long as you understand the things. Very easy, okay? Right now, I'm confident I can now use AI to prompt this thing and tell me what I want. Then I can debug, okay? So let's continue. Say now validate configuration. They're saying make sure your configuration is syntactically valid and internally consistent by using the Terraform validate command. Okay, let's use it. Okay, so I'll clear my screen and type Terraform validate. Okay, so what was the first command? Terraform init for initializing. What does initializing mean? It downloads the providers and installs them in a .terraform directory, which is hidden in your current working directory. After that, it will say terraform dot, what is it called? Terraform.log.hcl, which has the exact provider configuration. After that, you need to validate using terraform validate. Okay, look at it. It says success. The configuration is valid. Okay, and also remember we have that command called terraform fmt. Okay, we use terraform fmt for formatting our terraform files, and that happened successfully. And we discovered that the main.tf was not formatted well, and it was formatted properly for us. Now we continue. Now they're saying the example configuration above is valid. So Terraform returns a success message. The validate command helps you identify errors in your configuration. So in our case, it means we have no errors. Now they're saying, for example, if you mistype a resource name or refer to an argument, your resource does not support. Terraform will report an error when you validate your configuration, making it easy for us. Now we are on to the sweet part, creating infrastructure. Okay. Now if I take you here to back to my AWS, do you see I have no infrastructure here? Okay. You see, it says you don't have any instances in this region. So let's now go ahead to create it. Where was I? Here. So I'll say, I'll read it again. They say Terraform makes changes to infrastructure in 2 steps. Terraform creates an execution plan for the changes it will make. Review this plan to ensure that Terraform will make the changes you expect. Okay. They're saying once you approve the execution plan, Terraform applies those changes using your workspace providers. They're saying this workflow ensures that you detect and resolve any unexpected problems with your configuration before Terraform makes the changes. So assume Terraform plan is like git commit, something like that. Okay. So git commit is equivalent to Terraform apply. Okay. Before you push to GitHub. Okay. So before Terraform pushes our things to AWS. Okay. It first of all tells us, okay, do you want these things? Is it okay? Okay. So you're saying plan and apply your configuration now with Terraform apply command. Terraform will print out the execution plan and ask you to confirm the changes before it applies them. Your configuration includes a single resource, AWS underscore instance.app server. So your plan will indicate that Terraform will create your EC2 instances. Okay. So we need to run Terraform plan first. Okay. Where is this? Okay, I was thinking maybe the thing has changed, but it has not changed. It's the same. Okay. So where is this? Where was I? Okay, so let us do this. Okay, Terraform apply. Okay, to see the review. Come on, post B. Let me just type it. Terraform apply, and these commands are very easy. Okay, very easy. So there it is. So it's going to give us a review. So like I've told you, Terraform apply is like git commit. Okay, before you do git push, Terraform apply is like git commit. Now let's go up here. Okay, let's read from the beginning. You see what it says? They say Terraform will perform the following actions. Okay, AWS instance.app server will be created. Okay, tells you the resource. Okay, it tells you like the Amazon machine image is this one. Okay, remember it was given to us by our data block. Okay, then it has things like ARN, but it says known after apply, known after apply. Okay, so you have to review this. You see, I think this the instance type is t3.micro. Okay, if we continue, you see we have the tags. You see the tag is Airbound Ventures. Okay. Yeah, other things are known after apply. Okay. So you review everything. Okay. And of course, because this is from the documentation, I'm sure it is okay. Then they ask you, do you want to perform these actions? They say Terraform will perform the actions described above. And I think only yes will be accepted to approve. So if I go back here and I read for you the documentation, now you see they're saying the output format is similar to the diff format generated by tools as Git. Yes, this is correct. It's like diff by Git when you run Git diff. And I think the plus next to the resource, which is this. Let me show you what they're talking to. This plus sign, okay? This plus next to this, okay? Remember, resource type, resource name. We continue, okay? They're saying the plus next to the resource AWS instance app server means that when you apply this plan, Terraform will create the resource with AWS.app server as its ID. Then they're saying Terraform shows the attributes that will be set on your EC2 instance and indicates that some values will be known after apply. Okay, the values will be known after apply only. Then they're saying Terraform has not created any infrastructure yet. And like I've showed you on my AWS, there's no infrastructure yet. Okay, so they're saying if the plan showed unexpected changes, you could cancel the operation before completing this apply step. This is a very good thing. Okay, very good. Now they're saying in this case, the plan is acceptable. So type yes at the confirmation prompt to proceed. Applying your plan will take a few minutes. So I'll come here, back, scroll to the bottom, and say yes. Hit enter. Okay. I see this message says creating. Okay. Go back to the documentation. Then I say, okay, so now they're saying you have now created infrastructure using Terraform. Visit the EC2 console and find your new instance. So we're going to be doing this, okay? Instead of having to doing things manually, okay? So you're going to see, like I've told you in the beginning, we did the FastAPI. We learned FastAPI. I built endpoints using FastAPI. We talked about external APIs like Amadeus. I talked to you about Docker Compose. We deployed on AWS manually. Remember, we deployed manually. Now we are doing Terraform. After we're going to do CI/CD using GitHub Actions. Then I'm going to combine. Okay, I'll combine GitHub Actions, Terraform, Docker Compose, AWS to automate it, and you'll see how we're using just one command. After when I say git push, okay, everything will be automatic. Okay, Terraform will create for us an EC2 instance. Docker will be installed. All that. Okay, we shall run everything smoothly. That is going to happen. Okay, but before that happens, I don't want to leave anybody behind. I want to go step by step. That is why we are doing this like this way. Okay, on day 16. So if you're watching this for the first time, this is the 16th day of build or in the process of building a flight booking application, and not just the backend, but front end, backend, and DevOps. So you see this, it says apply complete resources, 1 added, 0 changed, 0 destroyed. So if I go back to my here, okay, and I refresh, okay, you're going to see good news. Are you seeing this? Let me minimize this. Are you seeing this? We have Airbound Ventures, okay, an instance running. And look at the region US East 2. If I click on it, you can look at the details, the public IP address, okay, just like last time, okay. And the configuration is very easy. Now that you understand what the configuration is, you can use AI to generate it for you quickly and review it. Okay. Okay. And you can even prompt AI carefully. Okay. Instead of creating this manual, you have to do this manual and you have to create 1,000 instances. You'd suffer forever. Okay. So this is very easy. And now let's now continue. Okay. Where's the documentation? So now you see how easy it is. And the more you do it, the more you understand. And like I told you, please make sure you read this documentation and practice. Okay. How is it going, guys? Let me know in the chat. And if you're enjoying this, share this in your network. Okay. And like the video. So let's continue. It says inspect state. They're saying when you applied your configuration, Terraform wrote data about your infrastructure in a file called terraform.tf state. Okay. But before we do this, let us look at the files it created earlier. Okay. I'll say ls. Okay. So you see we have this one, terraform.tf state. Okay. So it says Terraform stores data about your infrastructure in its state file, which it uses to manage resources over their life cycle. Okay. So this TF state handles the life cycle, okay, of our resources. So, but the other files which were created earlier, if I say ls minus a and I hit enter, okay. So minus a is used to show hidden files. Hidden files, like in my system here, have a prefix of a period, a dot at the beginning. So we have the .terraform. Remember this .terraform directory, which is used for handling our providers. Okay. If I say ls minus al terraform, okay, you see we have that. Okay. If I didn't also remember, we have this file, okay, terraform.log.hcl, which stores the exact provider versions. Guys, don't forget this. Okay? These are questions they ask you in interviews. Okay, you have to know these slight details that people can easily ignore. Okay, when learning, I like taking note of that. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, they're saying list the resources and data sources in your Terraform's workspaces state with the Terraform state list command. Okay, so it's Terraform state list. So I can say Terraform, and I like typing them when I'm learning for the first time like this. Hard typing them without copying and pasting. Okay, so you see this is the state list we have. Okay, and now they're saying, actually, we have the same. Okay. So these are the resources and data sources. So the first one is our data source. The second one is our resource. How do I know that? Here, we made them here in the main.tf. Okay. Data.aws.ubuntu is our data source. And AWS.app server is a resource, which is a T3 micro free tier Amazon machine image. How did we get this Amazon machine image? Using our data source here, which is data.aws.ami.ubuntu.id, which simply comes from this query. So the data source simply queries. So it queried and gave us the most recent. How do I know it's the most recent? Because of this line of infrastructure code saying most recent equals to true. As simple as that. So don't forget these details, my friends. Okay. So you see, when you go through it step by step, there's nothing confusing. Okay. People make this thing. I'm sure now if you've been told, oh, DevOps is hard and DevOps is complex, it's instead actually fun. Okay. And actually, I feel it is more natural for a backend developer to go into DevOps. Okay. Very nice. And yeah, I've enjoyed this. I don't know what you guys think, but it's been nice. And if you're enjoying this, please, like I've said, share it in your network. Okay. And like so that people get to know this. Okay. It's good to learn. Okay. It's good to learn with others, and you get by giving. Okay. You get more by giving. I don't know if you guys believe that concept. Okay. But I believe it, that to get more wisdom, you must give wisdom and knowledge. To get anything in life, literally anything, it applies. You try it and see. Okay. So let's continue. You're saying even though the data source is not an actual resource, Terraform tracks it in your state file, which is good. Okay. They say print your workspace's entire status using the Terraform show command. Okay. So I'll go here, expand it because I see it's going to show us a lot of things. And I'll say Terraform. When I was learning, I was like, does it have one R, single R? I kept on hopping between that. Okay. So you see, we have the whole thing here. If I scroll, wow, it's long and it's loaded with the good information. Okay. You see, we have the AMI, RN, all this. Now you see, they told us the values will be available after apply. Okay. Let me, I want to get the actual stuff. It says known after apply. You remember when we say Terraform applied? So now we know the values. You see, some are false, 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 others are null, others are stop. Okay. See the state is running. Okay. Now they're now known after application, which is good. And then now we continue. Let's continue reading. Now they're saying when you use Terraform to apply, to plan and apply your changes to your workspace's infrastructure, Terraform compares the last known state in your state file. What is our state file, guys? Do not forget our state file in case you're asked in an interview. Okay. Your state file is the terraform.state. Okay. So they're saying when you use Terraform to plan and apply changes to your workspace's infrastructure, Terraform compares the last known state in your state file, your current configuration, and data returned by your providers to create its execution plan. Okay, so it compares your last known state with the current configuration. For example, like if I came here, okay, and I added another provider, okay, I added here, say required providers, I added GCP, okay, then I came here into main.py and I changed, I created another block for provider GCP, mention maybe the region and the resources I want, okay, it will compare the previous state with my current configuration. That's what they mean by that. Now, listen to this. Very interesting. Saying Terraform, your state file can include sensitive information about your infrastructure, such as passwords or security keys. So you must store your state file securely and restrict access to only those who need to manage your infrastructure with Terraform. By default, Terraform creates your state file locally. As your infrastructure operations mature, storing your state remotely using HCP platform will let you collaborate with your team more easily to keep your state file secure. Okay. So because it might include sensitive information. Okay. I want to add it to my git ignore right now. Okay. Because I usually push. Okay. So if I quickly say git status, okay, you will see. Okay. Terraform.state is here. So I want to keep it safe. Okay. I'll go to git ignore and I add it at the end here, like that. You see? And I save. Okay. Now, if I clear the screen, okay, and I hit git status again, okay, there we are. It's not there anymore. Okay. So yeah, that's a good thing. Johannes Hemi says excellent tutorials. I am hooked. Oh, nice. Johannes, have I pronounced your name correctly? And are you let me someone just okay. So these funny apps that pop up all of a sudden, and when I've accepted their terms and conditions, and then it covers my my screen when I'm reading it, the chat. Yeah, thank you, Johannes. So let's continue, guys. Okay, let's continue. So they're saying continue to the next tutorial to learn how to modify your infrastructure. Okay, so step by step. So yeah, if you've not watched if you've not watched, I mean, yesterday's video, this 15, please go ahead and watch, okay? Because it will only make sense when you understand the problem at hand, what Terraform is, what it does, and how it will help, okay? Because take note, not every project needs Terraform, okay? But I told you why I need Terraform and how it's going to help me in my startup, okay? And what I'm building. So yeah, friend, that is it. Now, this week is going to be about Terraform, okay? And later we shall see. Like I've told you, we have to work with Terraform and GitHub Actions, okay? CI/CD and Docker. Those three have to work together. Then after that, we shall continue finishing our backend, writing tests, etc. After that, also we have to at some point we shall have to do Kubernetes. Okay, we shall learn Kubernetes together, and then we shall have to hook all the things together: Terraform, Kubernetes, Docker, GitHub Actions. I don't know. It's exciting. I don't know if you guys get excited about tech. Okay, like when I think about the things I want to do in this project, I'm like I'm only limited by being a human. What do I mean by that? I'm limited by time and being tired. Okay, I could work for 24 hours, but it's not possible because I'll get tired. But if it were possible to sit here, okay, for 24 hours. I will do it. Okay. Tech is amazing. Okay. All right. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this, like I've said, share it in your network for other people to learn. And yeah, let's join the bandwagon of learning and building on the internet. Okay, not only actually learning and building, but learning and unlearning. Like you've seen me, okay? I learned FastAPI for 31 days, okay? And you saw me face obstacles. You saw me talk about the system design and architecture. When I began building, I faced issues, okay? Because it was my first time building a FastAPI application, even if having experience in backend, okay? And you saw me navigating, failing, trying, learning, unlearning. That's how it's going to be throughout, okay? Like I told you, I read this thing 10 times, more than 10 times. So make sure after this, read this, okay? If possible, you can read and watch, okay? And do it on your own. Very important, okay? So next up in the next stream, we're going to look at how to manage, okay? And probably destroy. So if you've done this, probably I can show you something, okay? Maybe this destroy. So it's not even that hard, okay? If I go down, we shall look at it in detail, but we just need to do this, okay? Are you seeing this? Terraform destroy. You can simply come here, because if you're using something paid, you're going to lose money, okay? And you simply say Terraform destroy, okay? So tomorrow we shall redo it, okay? Reapply, initialize, and continue, okay? But we shall have a dev for understanding this in detail, okay? So don't worry, okay? We shall learn together. But for now, I want to show you this, okay? So that maybe after this video, you don't do it and get frustrated, okay? So I'll confirm and say yes, okay? But I don't want you to note this as the way of destroying, okay? We need to understand it deeply, okay? How do we come to this level of reaching this? Just like we understood how to reach to the level of saying Terraform apply, okay? We didn't just learn the command called Terraform apply. No, we went step by step, and that's what we shall do uh, in the next stream. So tomorrow, let's meet again at the same time and learn together. So I want to see, is it done? So when it is done here, I'll go to my AWS terminal and show you that they were automatically stopped. Okay. So let this stop. Says still destroying. Says 40, is it 40 milliseconds elapsed? Still destroying. Okay. If I go here and I go back to and refresh, you can actually see it is shutting down. Okay. It is shutting down. So yeah, thank you friends for learning with me, and yeah, let's continue learning, building, and create an awesome so look at that. It says destroy completed, one resource destroyed. So if I come back here and refresh, it should show terminated. From, you see, terminated. Okay, that's good. All right, thank you for watching, and of course very soon they're going to remove it from here. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this. Catch you tomorrow same time. Have a good one wherever you are in the world. And thank you, Abhishek, Yohannes, Henny, and Goren, and probably I know Jericho and Linus were quiet today, but thank you for learning with me. Bye for now.